Good morning to all of you out there in virtual land from sunny Massachusetts today. Thank you all for joining us. Beautiful day here in Massachusetts. I was even able to ride my motorcycle in one more time. Not a lot of that left in Massachusetts, but anyway, thank you all very much for joining us to our virtual and vertical sessions. We have an awful lot of information we want to pass along to you in these 4 sessions. Perhaps especially so in this first one, so I want to try to move it along. But of course, we do want to be able to answer your questions. This is in lieu of a traditional trade show where you'd be able to ask those questions. So we want to get to them as much as possible. So there is a Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. You can submit questions there, and we will try to answer some of them as we go along. And then at the end of the session, we'll leave it open to questions and answers. I guess I'll be giving the answers. But before we get into the information on the vertical saws and today, in this case, the Striebig Compact, I do want to give a kind of a brief overview of who we are. Colonial Saw is essentially Striebig North America. We are the exclusive North American importer and distributor of Striebig vertical panel saws, have been for more than 40 years, going back to the 1970s. So virtually every Striebig saw in North America has come through this very building here that I'm speaking to you from. We have 2 locations on both coasts, East Coast and West Coast, here in Kingston, Massachusetts, and in Ontario, California. We are a family-owned business, 3rd generation now. I am not one of the family members, but that's my segue to introduce my boss, our vice president, who is part of the family, Dave Rakowskis. Dave, jump on in here.
Thanks, Dave. Yep, I'm Dave Rakowskis, currently vice president here. As Dave mentioned, 3rd generation. It's my wife's family's business, my wife's father. Paul Ravinsky is our president, and her grandfather, Manny Pacheco, started or brought it to Massachusetts here back in the 60s. So we're 100% family owned. We try to act like that. We try to be the easy button for people around the United States. We try to stick to our niche products like Striebig and the Lamello machine that we have in the woodworking industry. We try not to be too many things to too many people because we want to be excellent at the things that we do. And because of that, we think that our service and our technicians and our parts people are very knowledgeable because we're focused on a couple of unique product lines that are high-end Swiss machines, and we try to focus on that. Like Dave said, we have technicians, Carl and Eddie, out in the West Coast who you won't meet because we're here in Massachusetts. We always have people on the road. A lot of people know Rudy Stalder, who's a Swiss guy who's been with us for 30 years. He is out on the road today. Clayton is out on the road today. So that's kind of how we work. We don't stop things for our own virtual trade show. If customers need help, we're going to help them. If customers need help on Saturday, we're going to help them. If we have to stay until 8, we're going to do that. It's not uncommon for our technicians to leave their house here at 4 in the morning so they could be in New York City by 8 in the morning. So we try to be flexible and approachable and easy to deal with. So I'm Dave Rakowskis. I'm going to introduce you to the couple of key Striebig technicians that we did keep back for the show here, and let them say hello to you also so you see some of the depth that we have. So we can start with, actually, let's start with Adam, who's our new service manager. He'll introduce himself, tell you a little bit about him, but from my standpoint, this is an investment for our customers. So Adam is a new addition to our team here on the service side. So anytime we add service depth, it helps you out as our customers. It doesn't necessarily help us out. When we add sales, of course, that's a different story. But when we add service, it's an investment in you, our customers, and making sure you're happy. So let's introduce you to Adam.
Thanks, Dave. Hi, everybody. My name is Adam Ushak. I'm the new service manager here at Colonial Saw. I bring 18 years of machinery and manufacturing experience to the team, and I previously served as a Swiss product specialist with Gossiger Automation and Brooks Machinery with a wide variety of product lines in the machine tool world. And I'm excited to be here and looking forward to get to know everybody.
Sounds good, Adam. Why don't you bring in either Kenny or Chris, who are a couple of our key Striebig technicians that happen to be here today.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Battle. I've been with Colonial Saw for about 2 years now. And my father was a service technician. I'm a service technician, so I'm traveling all over the country to install new saws and troubleshoot with customers on their existing saws. Graduated from Fitchburg State University in industrial technology. So my key strengths lie in computers and a little bit of programming here and there. So that's my story. If you need any help with CNC optimizing with the controls, I'm your guy.
Great job, Chris. Hand the mic off to Kenny.
Hello, how you doing? My name is Ken Fountain. I've been with Colonial Saw for a little over 28 years now, specializing in Striebig panel saws. A lot of you own Striebigs, you've probably seen me come to your company, do a lot of repairs and overhauls on them and overhauls here in the shop. I also work on the saw blade grinding part of things here, working on the 800 facers and the Unimaxes and the Hoopman machines. And specialize in the MDM machines also. Look forward for another 28 years and ride my bike eventually this day, but not today. But thanks a lot for tuning in today, and we'll talk to you later.
Nice job. Thanks, Kenny. Yeah, we're kind of proud of people like Kenny, who've been here for 28 years, and Carl, who's been here for more than 20, and Rudy, who's been here for more than 30, Dave Bull, who's been here for more than 20, I've been here more than 20, Bill Fletcher's been here for more than 20. So we have a lot of longevity, but we also mix it with people like Eddie in the West Coast, who's been here for a year. Chris has been here for a little over 2 years. Adam is new. Clayton's at 5 years. So we have a good mix. And Kenny has installed probably 400 or 500 saws in his time and worked on as many or more than that. So there's a lot of experience here. And I'm going to hand it to Dave, and let's get to the show.
All right, I've got my own mic, Dave. Thanks very much, Dave, and guys. That was great, and it shows our depth and the fact that we really know vertical panel saws. We are very focused on them. It's really the only industrial woodworking machine that we supply. So we really are the experts on it. So let's move on to the saws. First of all, some of you tuning in may know already exactly what you want, and that's great. We're here to help you with that. Some of you may still be evaluating, why would I want to consider a vertical panel saw versus some of the other ways that I can cut cheat goods in my shop. Vertical panel saws in general, I'll speak generally for a little bit here. They have a lot of advantages over other types of machines with which you can cut cheat goods. Compared to table saws and sliding table saws, I think the most obvious advantage is they take up considerably less room than any of the horizontal saws, whether it's a table saw, a sliding table saw, a beam saw. It's really fractional compared to those other machines. Even when we're talking about a table saw, I'm sure many of you are on them now and have built a whole bunch of tables up around it to be able to support the sheets as you're pushing through the table saw. You're still going to need a table saw in your shop, even when you have a vertical panel saw, for all the little things and for tilting the blade when you need to make bevel cuts and things, because we don't do that on vertical saws. But you can take all those tables that you built around the table saw away and put that table saw over in a corner and take it out when needed. The Striebigs take up approximately a quarter of the space of any of those horizontal saws just to cut 4x8 sheets. Because of course you need 8 feet in front of the blade, 8 feet behind it, 8 feet to the left, and nearly 8 feet to the right of it. On Striebig saws, we're less than 5 feet on most of our machines out to the furthest point out at the front of the saw head. So your shop space is worth something, whether you're paying rent on that shop space or you own the building and you need to fit all your machines in there. You're paying something for that floor space. So rather than perhaps move to another building, the Striebig can save you some space. They are, by design, exceptionally efficient at cutting big rectangles into little rectangles. That was their express purpose, going back to when Ludwig Striebig invented these machines in the late 50s. Ludwig, I'll give you a little brief history here. Ludwig Striebig, a Swiss carpenter, cabinet maker, had a problem cutting large panels that were coming into play in Europe at the time in 1958, 59, as he's sitting at his drafting table, if any of you remember what a drafting table is anymore, one day, and had the bright idea that wouldn't it be nice if I could make a saw that operated similar to my drafting board with a square on it and an articulating arm that I can cut both vertically and horizontally without necessarily moving the sheet or handling the sheet very easily. He made his own machine for his own shop out of a wood frame at the time. His neighboring cabinet makers liked the idea and said, geez, would you like to build one for me? He did that a couple of times, and that eventually in the early 60s turned into a full-fledged business, and later he gave up the cabinetry altogether and became a machinery manufacturer and started making the best machines, wood cutting machines in all of Europe. So these machines were designed expressly to cut big rectangles into little rectangles, as I say. So they do it much more efficiently than perhaps a more versatile or universal machine like a table saw or a sliding table saw. I don't know very many machines that are multi-purpose that do any of those single jobs as well as a dedicated machine does its job, and that's the case here. We're exceptionally efficient at cutting into rectangular parts, but again, only with square edges. Okay, so those parts that require a bevel cut on them, you will still need a table saw in your shop to do that. But if you go out into your shop and take inventory of the parts that are cut in the work that you do every day, if you're doing cabinetry type work, you're going to find that well over 90% of those cut parts in the shop are rectangles with square edges on them. And that's what we do here. Okay. The material handling is much easier in the vertical plane and therefore on a vertical panel saw than on any of the horizontal machines. You probably all know very well what it's like to wrestle a sheet horizontally up onto the table and then push it through the saw. Okay. Once the piece is on the Striebig saw, especially, but any vertical saw, it's much easier to handle vertically. Just think about the way you would carry a sheet across the shop. If you had to do so, you would carry it vertically if you had to do it by yourself. Same concept applies here. They are very safe machines. Intrinsically, the fact that we are moving a very precisely guided saw through a stationary sheet means that we are operating much more safely. I'm using one of the handles way out here, away from the saw blade, to operate the saw. My hands are never anywhere near the saw blade. And even if they were somewhat close, that saw blade is always covered or guarded by the shroud that's riding along top of the material, but is covering the blade all the time. So unless I somehow intentionally stuck my hand in the path of the blade, I'm operating safely. Also, we don't have kickback on vertical panel saws. It's certainly something you run into with table saws and sliding table saws. And I'm sure a lot of you have experienced it over the years. That piece gets wedged between the fence and the saw blade and kicks back at you, and that's not a pleasant experience. We just don't have that issue with vertical panel saws. The material's laying on its fence and we're moving the saw through it. A lot of the advantages of the vertical panel saw, the modern European style vertical panel saw that Ludwig invented, come from the fact that the sheet is stationary during the cutting process. Whether we're talking about a vertical cut or a horizontal cut, the saw is moving through the material and not the other way around. Nobody's hands are moving past the blade sticking up out of the table. For that same reason, it actually requires less skill on the operator's part, because once that cut is set up to be made, I can't wiggle the saw blade through the material. Again, I'm locked into a position and the saw is moving along very precisely machined guideways. I can literally close my eyes once the cut is set up to be made and make a perfect cut. Okay, so on the other types of machines, you know, it requires some skill on the operator's part to make a good cut. And when we talk about a regular table saw, you're never going to get the clean cut that you will on a vertical panel saw, especially a Striebig saw. Mary, I'll take a quick break here at this point to see if we have any questions to this point.
We do have one. Can these machines cut large European-sized panels?
Ah, okay. Somebody already asked him about the really big panels. Good, good. Yeah, absolutely. At least all Striebig machines, and probably the others as well, but certainly the Striebigs come in a variety of frame sizes. I'm speaking to you in front of our smallest 5x10 compact right now, but even the compacts are made in frame sizes large enough to handle the big European sheets, typically 6 foot 9 inches tall, 110 inches in width or length this way. Yes, we make frame sizes to cut those, and they're not very much more money at all than this 5x10 cutting machine, and that's true of all of the models. We don't, our price does not go up by much to cut very large panels, and we do it again easily. Once you get that panel onto the saw, it's really very simple from that point. So yes, we make Striebig actually has 9 different frame sizes in every model, every standard frame sizes in every model. Some of the other models beyond the compact are available in special sizes even larger than that. But yes, European panels, no problem, and much easier on a Striebig saw than on a horizontal saw for sure. So good. Any others, Mary, at the moment? Okay, we'll keep going then. So those are the advantages and why you want to consider a vertical panel saw in general. So who are our customers? They are typically, our most common customer is the small to medium cabinet shop, cutting primarily 1 sheet at a time if we're talking about compact level machines, although it does have the capability to cut up to 3 sheets of 3/4 inch at a time. It's got that depth of cut. And usually when the sheets are cut down to more manageable sized pieces, but then you're cutting light parts from those smaller pieces, yeah, then we stack them up 2 or 3 at a time on a regular basis. But primarily starting with 1 sheet at a time on the compact level of machines. So our small to medium cabinet shops are meat and potato customers, if you will. That said, builders, contractors who, you know, that they're building houses as their primary function, or commercial contractors, but they have decided that having a cabinet shop as part of that business is a good investment for them. They are great customers of ours for Striebig panel saws. Not the easiest guys to find and market to necessarily, because you got the guys operating out of their pickup trucks that would also be called contractors that don't have cabinet shops. But the builders are like the Striebigs very much because they might not be CNC router candidates yet at this point, but they want good quality panel cutting in probably a smaller shop, and they really take to the Striebig saws. Architectural millworks, again, for a universal kind of machine that anybody can walk up to and safely make a perfectly square panel out of. They have a lot of things going on in an architectural millwork, where a panel saw is a handy thing to have, and again, safer than walking up to a sliding table saw or a table saw to do that work. So architectural millworks find lots of uses. Grain matching large panels, occasionally trimming down doors, that kind of thing. Solid surface fabricators, for sure, very good customers of ours. In fact, we are really the go-to panel saw when it comes to solid surface fabricators. But we would never sell a solid surface fabricator the 5x10 compact machine. We start with those guys because their sheets are 12 feet long. We start with what we call the Compact Plus, and I'll get into that a little more, a longer version of this identical machine right here. But even that, we'll talk later about where we, what limits we put on the compact machine for them. ACM fabricators, don't know if any of you out there tuned in right now are deal with aluminum composite material, what ACM stands for. But those come in quite large sheets, over 16 feet long, typically only a little over 5 feet in width or height, as they would sit on our saw. But again, the compact is perfectly capable of sawing and grooving those panels, these aluminum composite panels, so that they can bend into panels or cassettes. So we bring in one of the larger table or frame compacts for the ACM fabricators. And there's a whole bunch of folks that I haven't just named right there that are customers of ours. They are really quite universal machines. And other than the fact that the blade doesn't tilt for cutting rectangular parts, they cut it on everything other than technically, steel or ferrous materials. So, yeah, plastics is another good one. So, yes, Mary, you had another question?
Yes. What are the options installed on the saw you were showing?
Okay. Got a few options on this one. And when we talk about the compact saws, the very smallest one, the 5x10, a lot of things on here are optional. Some of these things we include on the bigger table compacts that we sell. But to start, I do have the optional scoring saw on this machine. We'll get a better view of that, or Mary, unless you want to bring the camera around, and I can show it to them right now. Scoring, of course, is important when we are talking about melamine and other coated type panels. There's my scoring saw right there. On vertical panel saws in general, one thing to keep in mind is that the reliably good side of the panel is the side that's up against my support grid here. The side that I'm looking at when the panel is out there is the side I need to be concerned about chipping or blowout. So that's the side that the scoring saw would act on, is the side that we're actually looking at. So I can actually make a quick scoring cut to show you how that works. And we actually have two different ways we can score this panel. We don't necessarily need to have the scoring saw option installed. If we don't need to score all the time on a regular basis. This is a split blade. They're all split blade designs, no matter even on our control here to my right. They're all split blade designs. with either shims to set the overall width, or we have an infinitely adjustable version, a step up from the shims. This one I have the shim version on, the basic carbide shim version. I'm just going to make a quick sample cut here. I'm locked into position here. Right now my scoring unit is disengaged. I've disengaged, spring loaded to come forward once I release the handle. And it's going to be hard for you to see exactly how clean and good that cut is, but that's the front side. That's the back side that's reliably good, should be on a vertical panel saw, as long as I have a decent sharp blade on there. But very crisp, clean cuts, perfectly straight, perfectly square. And you saw how much effort that was for me to make that cut. Very, very simple on a vertical panel saw. So that's scoring. We can talk about that a little bit more later. I have digital measuring in both directions on this machine. Those are a couple of the popular accessories as well. I'll go back here while Mary's got the camera this way here. This is the y-axis. This would be for setting the dimension for doing horizontal rip cuts. Okay. On the small 5x10 compact here, this is an option, and I have it kind of temporarily installed on this one, but working, as you can see. And it will measure from the rollers up or from the center shelf, which I can employ when my parts are smaller in size and I still want to work at a comfortable height. It can measure from that level up. And it can also measure from the top of the panel down, which is oftentimes a more convenient way to make horizontal rip cuts. For example, if I wanted to a 4-inch strip cut off of this piece right here, I certainly wouldn't want to take that 4-inch strip off the bottom of the sheet and have to worry about, then removing that 4-inch finished piece and the whole rest of the weight of the panel coming down. I want to take that 4-inch piece off the top of the sheet. And I have a way here to measure that and precisely come down with digital accuracy to 5/1000ths of an inch, that 4-inch strip in the case that I'm talking about. So that's the y-axis. Optional on the small compacts, but now standard equipment on all the larger compacts, the Compact Plus, longer in length, or any of the taller compacts. The y-axis digital measuring is coming standard equipment. The x-axis, which moves right to left, but for measuring for my vertical cuts, is also, I have it also here on the saw. It's battery powered, whereas the y-axis was hardwired to the saw, so it comes on whenever I have power to the saw. This one I have to turn on if I've turned it off or put it to sleep. When I turn it on, it asks me to reference it. I just move it over here to the left-hand side. It comes on referenced from my main cutting station on the saw. I lock it into place, and I've got fine adjustment here with my red thumb wheel, so I can dial myself right in to the measurement that I need. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
3 questions. Okay. So again, digitally accurate to 5/1000ths of an inch. Great for obviously accuracy, but repeatability. If I need to come back to the same position in that cabinet job time after time after time, that will do that for me. If my material is really expensive and mistakes are very costly, that would be a good reason to have digital measuring system. If guys in this shop just struggle to read the tape measure, if anybody's having trouble finding guys that can read tape measure, digital measuring can certainly help you in that regard. We do read in decimal inches though, not in fractions, so they're going to have their little conversion table near them, but certainly it can alleviate some mistakes. I don't necessarily tell people that it's faster than setting the traditional stop on the tape measure. but a lot of people will tell me that they find it to be faster. So we have a couple more questions, I understand, Mary. What we got?
Do you offer material handling options for large panels?
We don't normally handle them ourselves, but they're readily available. For large panels, a vacuum lift is really ideal. Certainly, I'm not promoting anybody one over the other here, but certainly Schmaltz is one of the big names in vacuum lifts. They make a tilting head vacuum lift that can take the panel from vertical or from the horizontal plane and put it on the vertical plane and lift a great big panel safely with one person up onto the saw. But yeah, so we can certainly connect you with them, or your dealer can provide solutions for material handling.
Yeah.
Dave's got a thought.
Yeah, I have a thought there too. I mean, the rollers on the saws have access to it. At a lot of shops, you'll see simple Hapela vertical cart right next to the saw too, that's set up at the same height as our rollers. So it's very easy to roll panels right onto a vertical saw. You need space, of course, to the left of the saw to do that. You need space for the vacuum lifter too. So we don't sell material handling, but we have thousands of saws in the country, so we've seen a lot of creative material handling things that we can help you out with.
Yeah. Good thought, Dave. Yeah. So I'd say the panel carts probably get used more often in our typical, American size 4x8, 5x9 sheets. If we're talking about the big European panels, yeah, I think you might want something more than the panel cart. But lots of ways to load them in a vertical panel saw. So, thanks, Dave. What else do you have, Mary?
Is this saw good for cutting hardwood lumber parts?
That's a question we've seen before and seen earlier, so we prepped a little bit for that one. We visited our neighbor next door, Rich, and we have a nice piece of hickory that's got a little wow to it. So yeah, vertical panel saws are a great way to straight line lumber. We don't sell it specifically to do that, but certainly has that capability. And this piece that I have leaning up here would take you a while to run through the joiner to get that nice and straight. We'll do it in one pass here on the Striebig panel saw. To do that, I would use my center shelf. This is about an 8-inch wide board, but it does kind of wander all over the place. Give myself a little room to load it on here. So yeah, this is we know that a lot of our cabinet makers do this. They may not have a straight line rip saw. So, and again, yeah, they may have a joiner, but this piece, I don't know if Mary can get a shot down this piece and how much, how out of straight this one is. You see that?
I'm not sure you can see it from.
Yeah, I'm not sure how well it's showing on your video, but it's not very straight. But we're going to straighten it in a matter of moments here, with one quick pass. I know I've already pre-measured the width of this panel and what I want to take off of it. So again, this one. Set my digital measuring scale on my y-axis.
Put on my handy dandy goggles.
Thank you, Dave. It's always our safety reminder here. I'm so used to doing this trade shows and not live necessarily. If there's any ground to it, I want the ground up. One of the things you'll see happen here is the cut's going to be made right in that wood area that you've seen along the saw here, which is standard on every compact machine. But I don't want to be cutting into that wood support panel area. That's okay. The saw knows enough to shift out of the way just enough. It's going to shift upward so that my saw blade rides right in one of those spaces that's already there in the saw. See that happen if I punch the saw head in. soon as I pulled the saw head out, grid went back down to return to its initial position. And that is, if Mary could I don't think you're going to be able to see it anyway, Mary, but that is a perfectly straight jointed board. Now you can go to work with that and rip that into face frame parts or whatever you're going to need to do with it. Yeah, great alternative use for a vertical panel saw. Another question there?
Yep. The next question is, please show us how to measure with YEPS the 4-inch cut you are talking about.
Okay. Well, easy enough. So when I measure from the top down, yeah, when we're talking about the top up, from the rollers up, I'm sorry, or the center shelf up, that's easy. That's right on the scale. We zero the machine out. When I measure from the top down, I need to establish a starting point first. Normally that's done with a trim cut, so that's actually what I'm going to do first. When I do trim cut or horizontal cutting of panels on a compact saw from down on the rollers, you can see one of the advantages of the Striebigs over the other vertical panel saws out there are these rollers along the bottom. You see how easily it is to roll that sheet back and forth. A lot of advantages there. Dust is not collecting on my reference surface down at the bottom. As I roll the panel back, a little bit of dust that doesn't make it up into the suction system just falls right off the rollers, and I'm perfectly level to cut my panel. But for making horizontal cuts, if I don't have something stopping that sheet from rolling, I'm just going to be chasing it off the saw. Okay, so I come down here against my panel stop, kick it up with my foot. I don't have to bend over to get there. This is pretty standard practice, and that's making a trim cut first. Put my glasses back on. That's my starting point. The first thing I do after I establish my starting point, I could have measured that board and then set the saw to that height as my starting point. But more often than not, when we're starting with a fresh sheet, we're trimming the top edge. I press the far right button here is the saw kerf button, 0.125 or 1/8 of an inch, typical saw kerf width. At that point, that's essentially my 0 point. Now I unlock my saw head, go down, it counts through 0 and counts negative to that dimension that I want. In this case, we're using the 4-inch example. I will have to tap the saw head in the case of the compact, get right to negative 4.000 inches, make my cut. Therefore, I've already compensated for the thickness of the saw blade. I make that cut, it will be, I guarantee you, a perfect 4-inch cut. I could take my calipers out if I had a pair with me and measure that, and it will be exactly 4 inches. If I need to make another 4-inch strip, which is quite common, we call it repeat rip cutting. Again, before I do anything here, I re-zero myself by pressing the saw kerf button, unlocking my saw head, and lowering it now down to the next 4-inch increment. I can do that all the way down the sheet, of course. Okay, hopefully that answers that.
So Dave, yep, your next question is, please show us the measuring EPS 4-inch rip, which you just did. What are the electrical and dust collection requirements for the compact or compact plus?
Okay. We run compacts on either 208 or 240 or 480 volt. Most common is 208 or 240. On those machines, 15 amps of three-phase power. All Striebigs are three-phase machines. But you only need 15 full load amps. You would wire it for 20 amps in that case. We have lots and lots of people across the country that don't have three-phase power in their building. These machines run quite nicely on a good rotary type phase converter. Readily available. We can provide those if you don't have a source, but that'll provide the three-phase power that this machine needs. Dust collection, there are two 4-inch ports. One you have to connect. That's the main sawdust coming off the saw head here and going around the back. There's a cable chain arrangement behind the back. Maybe we can get a view of that in a minute here, Mary. And it can terminate on either end of the machine. I'd say more often than not, it terminates on the right-hand end, but for this purpose, we have it terminating here on the left-hand side of the machine, just because I wanted my dust collector over here to the left. So here's the pickup pipe. There you can see the cable chain that produces a nice single radius bend for the dust to exit efficiently. A 4-inch connection point right here, and really just 500 CFM to connect off this one main port. There is also an optional connection point, a 4-inch port also on the lower right-hand end of the frame, which is designed to collect some of that dust from rip cuts that kind of migrates to the right. Maybe it doesn't get sucked up into the main suction hood here. And it's designed to pick that up. It just falls to the bottom behind the Striebig name sign there on the right-hand side of the machine. And you connect that to your dust collector also. That's an optional port. Some people collect there, some people don't. Dave, other questions in there?
Yeah, your friend up in Montreal says, can you please explain again, but in French?
Je sais pas. Not very well, I couldn't. I would really fumble through that. That for questions for the moment? Okay.
Yeah, I want to point out something kind of like a pro tip. If you put the lumber back on.
Yeah, on the center shelf. Okay. Yeah. You want to put the side on that I cut just now, or the rough side?
The rough side.
Okay. Guess I don't know where you're going today, so.
Well, I wanted to show them this little flip stop here at the end of the saw.
Okay.
So you kicked up. So when you're ripping lumber, or really anything, we have this little flip stop here for working off the rollers, and there's a very small little flip up here. So when you're working off the center shelf, it'll keep your part from moving.
Yeah. For a board like this, it actually has enough weight probably on its own where we wouldn't necessarily need that flip stop. But for lighter, smaller parts, drawer parts and things like that, that might be light in nature and you just would want to skid along the center shelf fingers, the aluminum center shelf fingers. Yeah, that's a very handy device. So a few other things that make a Striebig unique among vertical panel saws. They truly are the best in the world. It's all that Striebig produces in their factory in Switzerland. It's not farmed out to some other place in the Mideast or anything like that. It's a state-of-the-art production facility in Lucerne, Switzerland. And it is exceptionally well engineered, well built. You do pay a small premium for the quality of a Striebig saw, but it is their only business. They are employee owned over there, so every machine that they churn out is important to them. and you see it doesn't translate very well to two pieces of paper on your desktop if you're reading down a series of specs. A lot of saws may have the same specs, but when you can touch and feel the rigidity in the frame, and the precision of the all welded steel frame, the detail of the wood small parts support area that nobody else has on their machine, the aluminum fingers that are on a T-slotted bar, so I can actually reposition those and tailor my machine to my specific work if I need to. The ability to snap in additional substantial small part support to support those pieces that are a little bit taller than the wood area here, a lot of them in cabinetry in that 1 foot range. These snap-in supports are very, very handy. I highly recommend them with every compact machine. They can snap into place. I recommend you keep one right to the right of your main cutting station on your saw so that everything cut here is at least supported on one side of the cut line. Nobody else is going to have anything quite this substantial to support their smaller pieces. The additional extension arm to the flip stop to measure those small parts like drawer parts. That was one of the historical arguments against vertical panel saws. Once the piece gets cut down to a certain size, I got to take it over to some other machine. Not really the case so much anymore with the Striebig compact machines. They can handle small parts.
All right.